now let's check the audio settings over here.
Can people on Zoom hear me?
No. Okay, most likely it's that the speaker is gotten unplugged. So let's look there first.
She said, no, but they heard you.
Well, that's what it said a little bit.
Interesting.
Is that better?
Now can you hear me? Now I can.
That's plugged in. So if they hear you at all, then. Volume. Try it now.
Okay, can you hear me now? No.
Little crap. We got it full on volume, so something else.
It's way low. Do you have a volume thing on the speakers that you guys?
Well, it's not the speakers.
No, on the microphone you got?
Let's see.
Maybe the mic setting is too low on the
Mic
Zoom.
setting is good. We checked that over here, audio. Press the, no, not there. It right there at the little ads. Okay, now does it show Yeti? Is it on Yeti? Up here.
Audio settings?
No, up here, microphone. Yeti?
Oh,
What checked? Let's go back there and look again. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good. That's good.
yeah.
Okay, and are people hearing better?
Are you hearing now?
Yay!
Yay! Well, it's too bad the volume went off because I just told everybody how to get enlightened. I'm sorry.
Maybe make that announcement again about the Doe Unreal
Oh, yeah.
training.
Um,
and what
Thank
it
you,
is.
Gretchen and
We're
Susan.
continuing our study of Tenzo Kokyan. And there will be a Doan Rio training on July 23rd. It's in the newsletter if you'd like to come and find out what's up with all those bells and what have you. You'd be very welcome. I guess let's start by introducing ourselves. I'm Debbie.
Susan, Ellen, Patricia, Laura, Leslie, Becky, Susan, Gretchen.
Okay. And on Zoom, we have Barbara, Diane, Marjorie, Jill Harper, Erica, Ellie Rose, Elizabeth, Nancy, and Carol Holmes. Okay. So let's start, who's waiting? Let's start with before lecture chant. Unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I am about to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. So I've really been enjoying studying this book. This is one of the first Buddhist books that I could understand. The first 2 or 3 years, like I'm not facing you guys, the first 2 or 3 years I sat, I wasn't really interested in studying anything. I really just wanted to sit. But I would go to the Dharma talks and I would just, it would be like, because I really I wasn't getting anything, but I think you get something through osmosis. Let's see. You're whispering over there, those tech people. Anyway, I just think that the Tenzo Kyokan is it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Because Dogen takes an everyday, well, Tenzo cooking isn't everyday cooking, but he takes an activity that all of us have done at one time or another. and it involves food, and we all have to eat. And he applies the Dharma to it in a way that for me was like the first time I started to kind of understand how practice really applied in my life. When Ellen was talking last week, I was having little flashbacks from Tassajara. I was there for a practice period about 10 years ago, and I was in the kitchen, and I remember thinking, I just love this. It's like they bring these vegetables out, and then the Tenzo's like, okay, I would like you to chop these into medium cubes. And then he goes over and he gets these little wooden blocks,
Yeah.
and he holds up the one that's medium. It's like, that's the kind of instructions I need. And I remember too, when we would walk through the kitchen, if you walk through the kitchen with a knife, you had to go knife, 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 you didn't stab anybody. But yeah, working in the kitchen was really, I think it's just like such a primal thing. You know, when I was thinking about, you know, wanting to do volunteer work and like, what would I like to do? And I thought, you know, I'm just not one for politics and debates and things like that. But I do strongly believe that people should have their basic needs met. And the idea of feeding people, it's brilliant. So I used to deliver food for various agencies. I realized this morning that I'm now the Tenzo at my house. But not for long, because Joni's starting to cook again. She's been a bit under the weather, and she was really the primary cook. You know, it's like before I met Joni, I would actually forget to eat. People would tell me, "You don't look so good. You should eat." I didn't really have a relationship with food. Like my mother didn't cook, and there were some things. There were some Armenian things that my mother would cook for my dad that have a lot of sentimental value. But otherwise, you know, it was just, okay, I don't want to die, so I'll eat. That's kind of changed. Just the whole idea of being totally immersed in what you're doing as you're doing it, so that you actually taste the food, you know, and not necessarily having a conversation with anybody else or doing anything else, but just being single-mindedly focused on that activity, in much the same way as the Tenzo is focused on feeding the Sangha. So, Tenzo Kokyan is one of the first entries in Dogen's Pure Standards for the Zen community, which is basically like the rule book, how he wanted his Sangha to behave and relate to each other. When I was at Tassajara, I'm trying to remember, there was a list of some of the rules, and I don't remember which ones they were, but, you know, there were like maybe 40 of us in this practice period, and they had us go around, like we had the book, we had us go around, and each person had to read like one of the rules. So, you know, I understand how with a lot of people, it's really good to have some sort of guidelines and boundaries. I was never actually a full-fledged Tenzo, but in one of the sanghas I practiced with, we did do oryoki, the ritualized style of eating, and we did have a Tenzo for the midday meal. But we did it a little differently. Someone would prepare a main dish in advance, and so the Tenzo just needed to put the rice in the rice cooker, prepare whatever fruit or vegetables would be for the little bowl, and then take it out so the servers could take it. So in oryoki, there's 3 bowls. There's the big bowl is the Buddha bowl, and that's for your main course. The middle bowl is for rice, and the small bowl is usually something like pickled vegetables or fruit or something like that. And the whole thing is very orchestrated. You know, there's chants that go on during it, and you know, there's a certain time where the 3 bowls are nestled together and wrapped. So the whole thing is choreographed, like when you unwrap the bowl and how you take the chopsticks and where you put things. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It really makes you pay attention to what you're doing. And the other thing that I wanted to say about that is that the thing that's really nice about having oryoki meals is that you're serving your sangha. So everyone's like sitting around in a circle, and you go up, the server goes up to 2 people at a time, bows, and then serves the person on the left. And so they hold their bowl out. And there's all these little gestures and stuff, like if you only want a little bit, you do this. And when you don't want any more, you do this. Well, when I was in a serving crew, we had this one guy, and it's like everybody was like, oh God, I don't want to serve him, because he would never like do this. And you're just like pouring these teeny grains of rice on because he's not telling you to stop yet. And we were always afraid we were going to spill something, but we got through it. So, okay. So the title of this, Instructions to the Cook, really doesn't reflect what this really is. The cookbook, basically, it's a cookbook for life. And when you hear people say, like in the title of this book, you know, cooking your life, and essentially what that means is that, you know, you're living the Dharma throughout everything you do in your life, whether it's feeding the dog or being a tenzo or whatever it is. Oh, what's that? I thought a bird swooped in or something. And so Dogen realized the importance of mindful cooking. He had a couple of encounters with tenzos in his travels, and actually finally found somewhere he could be a tenzo. And although, you know, we tend to worry about the most difficult things we have to do in life, but we don't think about the everyday things, you know, cleaning up after meals, setting the table, whatever these little things are. But Dogen saw that life is just an aggregate of these mundane activities. And to live fully, we must perform every act with our whole heart. So in this way, we can study the Dharma in our everyday lives by attending and valuing things without discriminating mind. And so Uchiyama, in this book, he goes through, if you've seen this chapter with all the little drawings of the people and the lines, and he's trying to explain how we can't really give and receive each other things. He talks about the notion of, you know, entertaining the notion of not being able to share even a fart, which I thought was funny. So, and he's saying that the absolute nature of human life precludes any exchange with others. But in our society, that's like all that it is. In the way of the world, things are predetermined. The prefabrication of assumed values about good and evil, fortune and misfortune, success and failure, so that things are, it's like there's a hierarchy. It's like, you know, the good thing to have is money. So we work and work and work to get money because we think it's going to make us happy. But it doesn't. And so if you're living, you know, by what I call the ways of the world, you see yourself as just one member of the world of exchange, just like a cog in a wheel. So it's only natural that We spend our days running towards happiness and away from pain. Because we're accustomed to this idea of trading and exchanging, we think that it's normal, and we forget that there is a life where trading has no bearing. And the life in which trade is irrelevant and impossible is the absolute world of the self. Sorry, my notes aren't as organized as I would like them to be. It's all here, I just don't know where. Okay. So I think one of the underlying principles, the fundamental spirit of the Tenzo Kyokan, is that it's vital to take the utmost care of that world in which we live out our total self. So when we change over from seeing ourselves in the usual worldly way towards seeing everything from the perspective of Buddha Dharma, the significance of all our daily activities change as well. The world is not an entity that exists apart from us. The world is where we function. Likewise, the life of the true self is not some entity apart from our functioning and working. Everything we encounter is our life. We try not to discriminate. We try to welcome things into our life, deal with whatever is going on, and not place a value on whatever that is. Like maybe my car breaks down this morning. Well, that's my life, so I call a tow truck. And the whole idea of things being fair or unfair, or meaning that you're good or you're bad, it's all irrelevant. I think our goal is to treat all things equally without discrimination, but to also understand, especially in the kitchen, where things should go. He talks about there are particular instructions about removing sand from the rice and rice from the sand without discrimination, and not assigning values to the food we're cooking according to, oh, is this like a nice tomato or does it have a brood? Or valuing one type of food above another. And so the thing I think I like the most about this is one of the few writings of Dogen that's not totally like ethereal. There's this, but there's not this, there's that, but there's not that. It's pretty straightforward. And that is incredibly good for me. So Okamura also wrote an interpretation of Tenzo Kokyan. And he talks about cooking the rice carefully, returning the kitchen utensils to their appropriate places. And in this way, we can study Dharma in our everyday lives by attending to and valuing things without discriminating mind. And that famous Dogen quote, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So essentially, what he's saying is that if we are practicing with big mind, and big mind includes everything, and accepts everything that comes to it, realizing that everything that comes to us is our life is very, very different from having like a 5-year plan. When we were at Tassafara for the Sangha week, I was sitting at this table sewing, and these 2 young guys came and sat down, and they were talking about what to me sounded like their 5-year plan for enlightenment, like where they were going to go study and, you know, where they wanted to be and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with making plans to do certain things, but we're not really trying to accomplish anything. We're just trying to be present and step up to our lives and deal with what is actually going on. And I have found that when I stop trying so hard to, you know, when I stop making rules about I should study this much, I should sit this much, and I just try to be present, you'll find that things come to you, opportunities come to you that you would miss if you were busy trying to plan everything out. And so the underlying message, I think, is that we already have everything we need. And this isn't an absolute sense, because where I went when I read this, because I tend to be very literal, I'm like, well, not everybody has everything that we need. Some people don't have anywhere to live. Some people don't have food to eat. But we're talking about this in the absolute sense that you already have everything you need. You have all the ingredients to create the supreme meal in the kitchen and in our life. Nothing is left out. Everything is here already, even if we think something is lacking. And I'd like to leave you with this quote from Suzuki Roshi that I really like. Suzuki Roshi used to talk about finding your composure and being settled. He spoke of it as being settled on the self. Being settled on yourself means never losing your composure. This is more than just having some false way of holding yourself. It means not being pulled off your place by anything, not reacting to someone's anger, not reacting to someone's emotions or feelings or ideas in a way that pulls you off your place. It also means taking good care of things, not just of yourself, not just of the people around you, but of your whole environment. So I think in reading this excerpt, it was funny because the two paragraphs that Chris asked me to talk about are like my 2 favorite ones. So I guess I'm curious to know from you guys. I mean, I can really see now, looking at how I do things, how practice has changed, how I deal with most things. Not being wasteful in the kitchen, putting things where they belong, taking care of things. And also just paying attention, really paying attention, and really being present. Because Joni loves this. She called me a sinky because I would eat standing in front of the sink. And I really thought, well, I have to eat. So, okay, I'll cook something, but why get a plate dirty when I can just stand over the sink and eat it out of what I cooked it in? And it was always like, I was always trying to get that done so I could go do something else. And I find that I do that with a lot of things in my life. Rushing through things, like in the morning, I'll think, I gotta get those dogs out there. I gotta walk those dogs, because if I don't walk the dogs, I can't rather than just being there, walking the dogs. And 99.9% of the time, whatever the thing was that I was worried about, that I thought I had to rush about, if I just let it go, everything was fine, So I'm interested in hearing from you guys how the idea of everything you encounter is your life has changed, the way you live, the way you see things. or anything else you want to talk about is always fair game. And now I call on my trusty assistant, Gretchen of the, oh, no, it's not Gretchen.
No, it's Gretchen and our
It's-
latest.
It's a team today.
Victor.
So we're gonna divide you guys up into groups. Let's see, how many people? We've got 11 people on Zoom.
So it's three groups?
Yeah, 3 groups,
3 people?
3 people in a
No,
group? That sounds good.
You change the number of groups, that's all.
I see.
And then you create.
So if we're gonna have groups of 3, that should be about 5 minutes for each person. And then we'll call you back.
It's gonna assume.
Okay.
So you probably go to people.
Well, I was thinking, wait, what was the cost? I was thinking about it because, Chris, before she left about meditation, I've been having a problem with my mind.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but.
And so it is a problem. Yeah. And I kind of, I went into a different realm.
Basically, in February,
Changed.
I was.
And I remember,
working
what I
on a
remember
job
was,
in Palo
often I was
Alto.
next to you
Every
in the
summer,
group.
I
And
go to Casa
I just felt
and
like
I
we're good.
work
We did.
at
Always got
Gas
to see
Station, like,
well,
all
you,
that
the
stuff.
whole
And they're
club
all
in
in
there.
there.
Except.
And I had like
So
people,
cool.
that was like kind of my plan,
And
for, like, you know, it's like,
I-
I'm gonna like work in this
So now I'm
intense
looking at
environment, and then
So we
like
can.
practice in the summer deeply, and like that's
So
gonna be the
what else
balance,
came up for
and
me
then
was
like,
when,
you know, I got a job up here, I had some
having
I like
things.
started dating someone.
I like to have my kitchen
And,
organized. And
I'm still gonna do my
I know
guest
how
students
things
there,
work.
you know,
Some people would
and
call me
then,
OCD.
just
And I don't
know,
think that I am. I think in my life that I was just so
it's just like,
changed.
oh, I'm not
So I love that.
tomorrow this
But I
summer,
don't
it's
think
not
the
gonna
OCD
work out.
now. Yeah.
So
And, I was kind of like,
Oh,
this means I'm not practicing, like, blah, 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 but I think it's like, oh, like, meeting all of these things that are coming in my life, instead of staying with like this rigid plan. Like, now I feel more and more called to like sit longer periods on my own, which always it was like, schedule a lot of it with other people.
I have to clean the kitchen.
So it's just interesting how
The
like,
dishes have to be done.
what I have in my head is like
The
real
salt has to be
practice.
here, so I think I do that.
Oh,
yes, I've got salt and pepper here.
Like this is
The oil
not
and
6 months
vinegar,
ago
and
what I planned.
they're all sitting on a
To have
platter,
it.
even, they're not off to the
Yeah.
side. Or Lazuri, and they're salt on this side, peppers on this side, you know, and the balsamic vinegar is the 212 to be under the cupboard, so I have to set it on the stove, and then I have a little thing that the spoon goes in. I have OCD. There's no doubt about it. I've had it all my life, but I have gotten better. When back in the day when I used to smoke, and people would be smoking around me, the minute they